January 27th, 1945. 0800 hours. The outskirts of Oswiecim, Poland. Snow whips across the barren fields like razor blades, cutting through the woolen greatcoats of the Red Army's 322nd Rifle Division. You can almost feel the biting wind clawing at your face, hear the crunch of boots on frozen earth as Major Anatoly Shapiro squints through the haze, his breath fogging the air in short, ragged bursts. No birds sing here. Only the distant rumble of artillery echoes from the east, a grim reminder that the Wehrmacht is crumbling, but not fast enough. Shapiro's men advance in a staggered line, Kalashnikovs slung low, their faces etched with the exhaustion of 1,000 kilometers marched from Stalingrad's ruins. They've seen hell before, the charred skeletons of villages in Ukraine, the mass graves outside Kyiv. But this is supposed to be just another labor camp, a footnote in the intelligence briefs. Auschwitz, the scouts had reported. Barbed wire, watchtowers, prisoners working the quarries. No one mentioned the smell. That acrid, sickly sweet odor creeping through the frost, like burnt hair mixed with decay. It hits them first, a whisper on the wind, then a punch to the gut as they crest the hill. Private Ivan Petrovich, barely 19, wipes ice from his rifle's sights. His fingers numb, he glances at Sergeant Yuri Kuznetsov beside him. "What is that stench, Comrade Sergeant? Like a slaughterhouse left to rot." Kuznetsov, a veteran of Kursk with scars crisscrossing his cheek, grunts without looking up. "Focus on the wire, boy. Nazis don't give up easy." But even he feels it, a prickle at the back of his neck, something unnatural lurking beyond the perimeter. The gates loom ahead, twisted iron crowned with the infamous slogan, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. A cruel joke, Shapiro thinks, as he signals the sappers forward. Explosives crackle against the fences, sparks flying in the pale morning light. The barbed wire snaps like brittle bones, and the first platoon surges through. Gunfire erupts sporadically, straggling SS guards firing from the towers before bolting into the woods. Shapiro's voice cuts through the chaos. "Forward! Secure the barracks!" His men fan out, boots pounding the snow-slicked paths, hearts pounding harder. Inside, the camp unfolds like a nightmare etched in white. Empty barracks stretch in endless rows, doors banging in the wind like ghosts calling out. Piles of abandoned luggage spill from train platforms, suitcases marked with names, chalk-scrawled destinations that lead nowhere. A discarded child's doll stares up from the muck, its glass eyes unblinking. Petrovich kicks open a door, expecting resistance, but finds only silence. Bunks stacked to the ceiling, thin as matchsticks, stained with what looks like blood and worse. "Empty," he mutters, but his voice echoes too loud, too hollow. Then movement. From the shadows of a far hut, figures emerge, stumbling, skeletal, wrapped in striped rags that hang like shrouds. Eyes sunken in hollow sockets, skin stretched taut over bones. One man, barely standing, reaches out a trembling hand. "Russians?" he whispers in broken Polish. "You've come?" The soldiers freeze. These aren't prisoners, they're phantoms, the living dead. Kuznetsov lowers his weapon, his hardened facade cracking for the first time since the Volga. Shapiro pushes forward, his unit spreading through the compound. They find the warehouses next, doors burst open by fleeing guards. Inside, mountains of shoes, thousands upon thousands, piled higher than a man. Women's heels, children's boots, all jumbled in a sea of leather that reeks of despair. "What the hell is this?" a corporal barks, kicking at the heap. But no one answers. The truth is dawning, slow and sickening, like poison seeping into veins. Further in, the crematoria, chimneys still warm to the touch, belching faint smoke into the sky. Ash drifts like dirty snow, coating everything. Petrovich bends down, scoops a handful, gray, fine, flecked with bone fragments. He drops it as if burned, wiping his hands frantically on his trousers. People, he chokes out. This is people. The major halts his advance, radio crackling with reports from other units. The 100th Division to the south confirms the same. Birkenau, a sister camp, even larger, with gas chambers disguised as showers. Shapiro's mind reels. They were told labor camp, forced workers, not this factory of death, engineered with German precision to erase entire peoples. Jews, Poles, Roma, millions, the whispers say. His rage, forged in the fires of Leningrad's siege, twists into something deeper, a horror that hollows the soul. As the sun climbs higher, melting the frost into rivulets of mud, the soldiers begin to count the survivors. 7,000, maybe less, too weak to cheer, too broken to believe in liberation. One woman, clutching a bundle that turns out to be her emaciated child, collapses at Shapiro's feet. "They burned them," she rasps, "day and night." The major kneels, his voice steady, but eyes betraying the storm within. "You're safe now. The Red Army is here." But are they? As medics rush in with meager rations, bread, soup that steams in the cold air, the full scale begins to unravel. Documents scattered in the commandant's office, ledgers of arrivals, departures marked only as processed. Numbers that defy belief. 1 million? More? Shapiro clenches his fist around a crumpled manifest. This isn't war. This is annihilation. The men gather around a bonfire that evening, faces illuminated by flickering flames. Petrovich stares into the embers, his youthful bravado shattered. How could they do this, Comrade Major? To women, children? Shapiro doesn't answer right away. Instead, he thinks of Berlin, still hundreds of kilometers away, and the Führer cowering in his bunker. This discovery, its fuel, pure and vengeful. But tonight, as the wind howls through the empty barracks, a question hangs unspoken. What horrors lie deeper within these gates, waiting to be unearthed?
The afternoon sun hangs low, casting long shadows across the compound as Major Anatoly Shapiro's battalion presses deeper into Auschwitz I. The sporadic crack of rifles has faded. The last SS stragglers have vanished into the frozen woods. You can taste the ash in the air now, thick and cloying, clinging to the back of your throat like a bad memory that won't let go. Shapiro wipes frost from his mustache, his eyes scanning the rows of barracks, wooden hulks sagging under snow, doors creaking open to reveal nothing but darkness and echoes. Sergeant Kuznetsov kicks in another door, his PPSH submachine gun at the ready. "Clear," he calls, but his voice wavers. Inside, triple-tiered bunks, straw mattresses soiled and crawling with lice, the faint outline of bodies that once filled them. Petrovich follows, his young face pale beneath the grime of weeks on the march. He pokes at a pile of rags with his bayonet, then recoils. Not rags, a corpse, frozen stiff, eyes wide in eternal surprise. "Comrade Major," he whispers over the radio, "they left them here to die." But then, from the far end of the women's block, a rustle, weak, deliberate. Shapiro motions his men forward, boots crunching over frozen blood pools that gleam like dark glass on the floor. The stench hits harder here. Excrement, decay, the metallic tang of fear long dried. Figures emerge from the shadows. Women, or what remain of them, wrapped in threadbare stripes, skin translucent over protruding bones. One stumbles toward Kuznetsov, reaching out with claw-like hands. She touches his greatcoat sleeve, as if testing if he's real. "Ruski?" she croaks in Yiddish-tinged Polish. "You free us?" The soldiers lower their weapons. No enemy here, only ghosts. Petrovich drops to one knee beside a girl, no older than 15, her head shaved, tattooed arm trembling as she clutches a crust of bread scavenged from somewhere. Tears freeze on her cheeks. "Mama?" she murmurs, staring at the uniformed men like they're apparitions. Kuznetsov, the Kursk veteran who's buried comrades in blizzards and burned villages, feels his throat tighten. He pulls a chunk of black bread from his pack, presses it into her hands. She stares at it, then at him, eyes hollow but flickering with something like hope. Shapiro pushes into the next barrack, marked Kinder, children's block. His heart, hardened by Stalingrad's rebel and Kiev's graves, skips. Only two small forms huddle in the corner, alive amid the dead. Boys, perhaps 8 or 9, curled together for warmth that isn't there. They scream when they see him, mistaking the Red Army uniform for another SS monster come to drag them away. "We are not Jews," one wails in terror, the lie drilled into them by guards. Shapiro freezes, the words hitting like a grenade. He kneels slowly, hands open. "No more gas," he says softly in Russian, then halting German. "The Red Army is here. You are free." Word spreads through the camp like wildfire in dry grass. Survivors crawl from hiding places, under bunks, in latrines, behind walls. They swarm the soldiers, kissing boots, overcoats, hands. Some collapse, too weak to stand. Others weep silently, tears carving tracks through the dirt on their faces. A man in his 40s, ribs like xylophone keys, grabs Shapiro's arm. "They took my wife, my daughters, to the showers." His voice breaks. Shapiro nods, unable to speak. He's a Ukrainian Jew himself, though he's buried that deep under years of service. But here, in this place, it surges up, a quiet pride mixed with unspeakable grief. Medics arrive by dusk, unloading stretchers and field kitchens. Soup steams in the cold, but many survivors can't keep it down, their stomachs shrunk to nothing after months of starvation. One woman vomits blood, clutching a medic's sleeve. "Too much," she gasps. "We can't eat." The soldiers share their rations anyway, chocolate, cigarettes, whatever they have. Petrovich sits with a group of children, showing them photos from his wallet, a farm back home, a sister smiling. For a moment, laughter, thin, incredulous, echoes in the barrack. As night falls, bonfires light the paths between blocks. Shapiro gathers his officers. Reports trickle in from Birkenau, 2 kilometers away. Even worse. Gas chambers, crematoria still smoldering, pits of bodies. One scout returns pale, vomiting in the snow. "Major, it's not a camp, it's a slaughterhouse." Shapiro stares into the flames, thinking of the road ahead, to Krakow, to the Oder, to Berlin. This horror, it's changed everything. The rage that carried them from the Volga now burns colder, sharper. But deeper in Birkenau, under the cover of darkness, scouts uncover something that will shatter even the hardest among them, the full machinery of death, intact enough to reveal the Nazis' final frantic attempts to hide it all.
January 28th, 1945. Dawn breaks gray and unforgiving over Birkenau, 2 kilometers from the main camp. Major Anatoly Shapiro leads a reinforced platoon across the frozen tracks, past abandoned rail cars, still reeking of human cargo. You can hear the wind moaning through the endless barbed wire, carrying that same ash-laden stench, now sharper, more metallic, like the aftermath of a forge gone mad. Shapiro's boots sink into the mud as he signals his men to spread out. Intelligence from survivors points here, the heart of the beast. Sergeant Kuznetsov takes point, his PPSH ready, eyes scanning the vast grid of barracks and chimneys. "Like a city of the dead," he mutters. Petrovich nods silently, the boy's face hardened overnight. They've heard whispers from the liberated, gas chambers, crematoria, millions vanished, but words can't prepare them. The first ruin appears, Crematorium 2, its roof collapsed inward, twisted metal beams jutting like broken ribs. Shapiro approaches cautiously, waving off a sapper checking for booby traps. The SS fled in haste, dynamiting what they could to erase the evidence, but they failed. Concrete steps lead down into the earth, an underground chamber, long and narrow, with fake shower heads bolted to the ceiling. Disinfection, a faded sign, lies. Shapiro's flashlight cuts through the gloom, revealing scratches on the walls, fingernails, desperate marks from those who realized too late. A soldier retches outside. Zyklon B cans, another calls, kicking at scattered blue pellets near ventilation shafts. Shapiro kneels, picks one up, crystals that killed by the thousands. His mind flashes to his own Jewish roots, buried under years of Soviet service. This wasn't war. This was methodical murder engineered with blueprints and timetables. Further on, Crematorium 3 mirrors the horror. Ovens still warm, rails for sliding bodies in, piles of ash shoveled hastily into pits. Petrovich stares at a mound of bone fragments, too numb to speak. Kuznetsov lights a cigarette with shaking hands. They burned them alive? No, gassed first. A survivor guide, a Polish Jew barely standing, nods. Day and night, trains arrived, selections on the ramp. The weak to the chambers. We, the Sonderkommando, we had to... His voice trails off. Shapiro's unit uncovers warehouses untouched by the blasts, Canada barracks, stuffed with loot, suitcases labeled with names and addresses, eyeglasses in heaps tall as a man, prosthetic limbs, children's toys, 7 tons of human hair, baled for shipment, shaved from the dead for mattresses, insulation. One soldier pulls out a tiny shoe, embroidered with a flower. He drops it like it's poisoned. Reports flood Shapiro's radio. Similar finds at Crematoria 4 and 5, partially demolished but intact enough. Gas chambers disguised as showers, pits where bodies burned when ovens overflowed. The scale hits like artillery. Over 1 million, the documents suggest. Jews from across Europe, Poles, Roma, Soviets. Ledgers meticulous. Arrivals, special treatment, ashes dispersed in the Vistula River. That evening, back in Auschwitz I, Shapiro briefs his commanders around a map stained with coffee and blood, faces gaunt in the lantern light. "This changes the war," he says quietly. "No more just pushing to Berlin for victory. Now it's vengeance, pure and righteous." Petrovich, listening outside, clenches his fists. The boy who joked on the march now dreams of SS necks under his bayonet. But as medics tend the survivors, too many dying even in freedom, and photographers document the ruins, Shapiro wonders, how do you comprehend evil this vast, and what will it demand from men like him on the road ahead?
February 1, 1945. The Red Army pushes west from Auschwitz, leaving Auschwitz behind under heavy guard, now a crime scene too vast for words. Snow still falls, but the air feels different to Major Anatoly Shapiro's men, heavier, charged with a silent oath. You can sense it in the way they march. No songs today, no banter over cigarettes, just the steady crunch of boots and the low growl of T-34 engines slicing through the Polish plains. Shapiro rides in the lead jeep, map spread across his knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. Berlin, 400 kilometers. Every village they liberate now carries the shadow of those gates, those chimneys. Reports filter back, survivors loaded onto trains for field hospitals in Krakow. Photographers developing plates that will soon shock the world. But for these soldiers, the images are burned inside. Skeletal faces, piles of hair, children's shoes.
Petrovich, riding in the truck behind, clutches his Mosin Nagant tighter. The boy who once dreamed of medals now dreams only of payback. At a crossroads near Chenstokhova, they overrun a retreating German column. SS rearguard, Waffen-SS no less, from the Totenkopf division. The fight is brief, brutal. Kuznetsov leads the charge, his PPSH spitting fire as he screams something incoherent, primal. When it's over, prisoners kneel in the snow, hands high, faces drained of arrogance. One Obersturmführer, collar tabs gleaming, begs in broken Russian, "Kamerad, Geneva!" Shapiro steps forward, pistol drawn but steady. He sees the man's eyes, cold, bureaucratic, the same eyes that signed manifests at the ramp. The major doesn't shoot, not yet. Instead, he orders the prisoners marched back toward Auschwitz under guard. "Let them see," he tells Kuznetsov quietly. "Let them walk through what they built." The SS men are forced past the gates days later, past the warehouses, the crematoria ruins, the survivors who stare with hollow accusation. Some collapse. One hangs himself in a barrack that night. The Red Army soldiers watch without pity. Word spreads up the chain. Marshal Konev hears the reports. Stalin himself demands details. The discovery fuels the final offensive. Rations increase, ammunition flows, leaves cancelled. "For Auschwitz" becomes the unspoken battle cry. In the Oder bridgeheads weeks later, when German counterattacks slam into Soviet lines, the 322nd holds with ferocity no one expected. Petrovich, now a corporal, bays charges across minefields, grenade in each hand, screaming as he clears bunkers. Kuznetsov earns the Hero of the Soviet Union for single-handedly wiping out a machine gun nest that bore the Death's Head insignia. Shapiro writes no letters home. What could he say? Instead, he keeps a small notebook, names of survivors he promised to remember, sketches of the camp layout for the War Crimes Commission. At night, around campfires, the men talk little of victory parades. They talk of justice, of Nuremberg whenever it comes, of making sure the world never forgets. By April, as Zhukov's armies encircle Berlin, Shapiro's division storms into the suburbs, street by street, house by house. When the Reichstag finally falls, a soldier from the 100th Division, the same that entered Birkenau, raises the red banner. Shapiro watches from a shattered window, ash from burning buildings, drifting like dirty snow. He thinks of January 27th, of the woman who clutched her dying child, of the ash he held in his palm. The war ends 8 days later. Victory. But for these men, it's different. They return home changed, some to parades, some to silence. Petrovich farms in Ukraine, never speaking of it. Kuznetsov drinks himself quiet in Moscow. Shapiro emigrates years later, carrying photographs and testimonies to the West, ensuring the story lives. Because what they found behind those wires wasn't just a camp, it was a mirror, showing humanity its darkest capability. And in staring into that abyss, they forged something unbreakable, a vow that it must never happen again.